Today you'll see a pattern for knits. It's a great layering piece, and depending on your fabric choice, it could be a really smart looking cardigan or a blazer. It's all up to you. I'm going to share the details and also a little bit about how I wear my me-mades in my regular daily life. Sneak peek of mine. Stay tuned. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. What I'm sharing with you today was actually the last garment I sewed before my trip here to Chile to see my parents for the summer. I am in the southern hemisphere, so it is summer over here, and I'll be at my parents till mid-January. So really stressful times if you know what it is like to travel. I had additional stress factors, meaning I wanted to keep the channel running and I had to think about packing things for sewing and so many things. This video is a pattern review about the Tuva Smart Cardigan from Sinclair Patterns. And you can see the liner here. It's a really neat design, super unique, something I really haven't seen in the pattern world, and I was really excited to sew it up. I was a pattern tester for this, and this is designed for knit fabrics. You see in the liner that the front is composed of two main pieces here, and in between those pieces there is a curved seam as a design line. In that same curved seam there is a trim. It's not optional, it is part of the way it's constructed, and built into that seam on the side towards the hip on that curve, there is a built-in pocket. So in that area, it's double layered and super fun to put together. Wear it open or closed, it looks like a V. It's a really clean front and I love the look of that. On the back, you have princess seams with really nice waist shaping. This is not a boxy design at all. It looks really nice on, it fits really well. The long sleeves can be finished at the bottom with a regular hem that you just turn up and sew, or you can add a cuff that also has the trim to match the one that you see on the front. There is an optional single button closure that you can opt to put in there or not. I have decided to put a button there. And as for the length, there's one that hits the high hip and one that hits the full hip. I've chosen to do the high hip version just because of the fabric availability I had. The long version looks awesome as well, and I would have liked to sew that one too. This pattern has been designed for knit fabrics. It will not work if you use a woven fabric, not even if you size up. And I mentioned this because usually in these videos I will get a comment of someone asking, can I make this in a woven? Definitely not, especially this one that has fitted shoulder and bust. You just cannot do it. So just stick with the fabric recommendations is what I'd say. And you need a medium to heavyweight fabric. Your fabric does need to stretch horizontally 20 to 30%. It is not a lot compared to other fabrics, but it does need to stretch. You also need the vertical stretch, 15 to 20% also. If you have a fabric that just stretches horizontally and not vertically, it might not fit very well around the armholes and the bust, might end up looking shorter than what you expect. The ones that are recommended are Ponte Roma, double knits, jacquard knits. There are some really nice knits that have a lot of texture that I can never find, but I did see a lot of the testers use those. Amazing. You can also use sweater knits that are a bit more structured. That is the option that I took. And you can also use scuba, some Liverpool maybe, but just make sure that those fabrics have that vertical stretch, because you might find some that don't and some that do. So I think you really have to assess the fabric in person, in your hands, or have all the information available to you if you're buying online. You cannot use the lightweight fabrics like ITY or rayon spandex, modal spandex. Those ones would sag, the pockets would sag, it would be really floppy. You couldn't really hold the structure of the collar properly in those types of fabrics, so it does need to have a little bit of structure. My sweater knit fits all the criteria. It is not a drapey sweater knit. I do have others that are really floppy. This one actually will stand up on its own if I hold it up. It does have the appropriate stretch vertically and horizontally, and you can see a clip of it here. I love the print. I decided to use the trim in a navy to contrast the print. I think the design lines are super pretty, so if you're using a print and you do the trim in the same fabric, the detail will be lost. It's not the case if you're using solids, just one color. You know, if you use self fabric for the trim, you'll still see it because it's a solid. So that is my option. Look, the trim is not optional. It's not that you can just opt to not do the trim, because it is part of the way that this front is constructed. You cannot put it together without that. If you don't want that contrast, just use the same fabric that you're using for your main front pieces and you'll be fine. In the instructions and on the way that the pattern pieces are printed, that trim is actually called a collar band. So that's how you see it everywhere. That's the naming that was given to this trim. It's just a really long piece that you fold wrong sides together and then you pin onto one of the pattern pieces later. Apart from your fabric and maybe a single button if you're going to use that, another notion that you need is lightweight tricot interfacing. You do need it to be that type of interfacing that stretches. You cannot use woven type of interfacing or the type that doesn't stretch, because you will need to interface part of the front facing piece. The front facing piece comes from behind here and goes all along the center front. I'm showing you a picture here. It's quarter facing, even though it's not on the inside of the garment, it is seen on the outside of the garment. This is where you pin and sew your trim onto, and then you sew that piece onto the front. That's how you get your pocket opening. So this front area does need to be stabilized. You can see me fusing that interfacing there. It's only fused partially, not on the total pattern piece, just in this front area. You can't really use stiff interfacing because you do need that stretch vertical here for you to be able to move and everything. So just make sure you have the proper interfacing that stretches, not the one you would use to make woven shirts and things like that. Because that area is interfaced, you won't really have any drama making that single buttonhole if you are going to put a button there. Because the Tuva Smart Cardigan is a new pattern, it is 20% off for the first week of its release. The pattern was released on Wednesday, the 1st of December. So there's still a few days for you to have a look if you want to get it for yourself. My affiliate link is down below if you'd like to use it. I make a little commission from there, and that always helps support the work that I do on YouTube. The sizing is great from 0 to 30 US. You know, Sinclair Patterns has the petite, the regular, and the tall height files, and those are the ones that you choose first according to your height. That means you'll have a much better result with sleeve length, total body length, and for me at least, you know, it's really important to get a good fit from the shoulder to the waist, that length as well, especially with garments like this that do have that shaping. So I think the height files are really good and really practical to get a good fit. Apart from choosing the toe file, then I went and made a size 16. I've had a great result with that size for a pretty long time now. It fits me really well. And I usually don't make a muslin for a project like this. I just go ahead and sew. I know I'm gonna get a good result. I mentioned that the cardigan is semi-fitted at the shoulders and the bust. So at the bust, you have 0 ease or maybe 1 inch, just depends. It's not a lot of space you have at the bust. You have a little bit more space at the waist, and at the hips, about 2.5 inches. Now this video is a little bit different. I don't have a formal sewing segment, although I'll have a different segment towards the end that shows you how I really wear this in my real life. Although you will see a really nice styled video, lookbook, and pictures also as how I would wear it, you know, if I really want to dress up. But I'll show you and I'll go through all the details with you. This is my version. This is my sweater knit. I love the print, the paisley. It's got a bit of brown and navy beige. I think this would go really well with denim or a navy blue dress. It's just really nice. You know, I like to dress with bold things, but I also like colors like this. This is what is called the front facing right here, or this piece that goes up to here. But you can see that the facing is not inside, it's on the outside, and this facing piece is the one that's partially interfaced. Now this one goes on top of the front piece, and this is where the trim goes. So first you have to pin on your trim that's already folded lengthwise, wrong sides together, to all this curve around there. You'll find a series of notches that will help you match the trim to this area. In some areas you'll have to stretch the band slightly to match. What I did was get my trim and hand baste it on while stretching it to match the notches. I thought it was going to be super easy for me to just sew that on while hand basted already, instead of using 1,000 pins. Now around this area the trim is not stretched out much at all, it's just more in this area to conform to the curve there of the pocket. In the same area is where you have that pocket built in. So your front piece is larger, this goes on top, so you'll never see the interface side, and that is how that looks. The trim is edge stitched right there flat. It's so nice, and at the later stages you sew that on right there to fix it, and that is that seam that you see right there. Look, the instructions are all photographs and very easy to see. Oksana, she uses contrasting fabrics, so it's really easy to see which piece is what piece. The right and the wrong side, it's all really clearly indicated in the photos, so it's really easy to follow. Now in the beginning there are a few steps that you would think are not intuitive to what you usually sew, especially when you're sewing this center back piece on the front piece. Usually when you sew pattern pieces together, you sew them right sides together. Not in this case. You can see the wrong side is really clean there, and that's because this was sewn wrong sides together there. That's the front piece. That's why you get that clean end there. Just follow the instructions, it'll be super clear. And now on the front facing piece, this seam is sewn like you would normally, right sides together, and that's why you have a clean finish right there. So those are things that you need to be really aware of. There are sections in the pattern where you need to sew with a sewing machine because it's just more accurate and you get a better result. It's always really clearly explained in the instructions also. And I love getting my sewing machine for knits. I think you can't expect to sew every single knit project 100% on the serger. It's just not possible, especially when you have really interesting designs like this. At the back, you have a center back seam and side back pieces. Look, this is a print, so you can't really see. Here is the seam and it's been edge stitched as well. Top stitch down to keep it flat. Really neat. It gives amazing back shaping. You're not going to have excess of fabric back there. It looks really nice. It fits amazing. The version of a sleeve that I've sewn is just the regular sleeve that's hemmed normally, although you do have an option to use a cuff with a trim in the same way like this. I'm sure in the future when I make this again, I'm going to try out the cuff version with a trim. I think it looks really pretty and it's really interesting. You can see that the wrong side of the fabric is there. There is some understitching right there to bring that wrong side of the fabric to the inside so it won't be seen from the outside when you wear your garment. So if you do your understitching nicely and correctly, you shouldn't really see the wrong side of the fabric too much. Maybe if you move around and there's wind and your jacket flies open, maybe you'll be able to see the wrong side. So have a think about that if that really disturbs you and if the knit you've chosen has a really ugly wrong backside. I didn't think this was too ugly, it's just grey. So if anything flies open, I'll be fine. The hem is folded up twice, once by 3/8 and then again by a larger amount, so it's quite a deep hem. I always hand baste that on really neatly to make sure it goes around the curves really nicely, and then I used a twin needle to hem mine. It's super neat, very nice result inside. From this side it looks really neat, and there is a really interesting way that you unite the front to the back pieces with the hem. It's not the steps that you usually do, and it's done sort of in 2 steps, very well explained in the instructions. You'll see that you need to do some memory folds and creases for the hems before you actually sew side seams, so you have to go and fold in by 3/8 and then again, and have that seam nice and marked so that you see the creases there. So what can I say? It's a great pattern. I don't think this is the type of pattern that you'll go up and whiz up in 1 hour. Definitely not. But not every project has to be like that, you know. Usually the patterns that take you 1 hour to sew are more basic in the design and the construction, which is fine. But I think this one has special details that make that extra time that's going to take you worth it, because the design is really unique, the sewing techniques are really unique, so it can be super interesting and fun to put together. I know I enjoyed mine. Just follow along, the instructions are amazing and you'll be able to get your result really nicely. Now I have styled this with my navy blue booties that I love and a basic navy dress. I would go to church like that, or even to the mall, or anywhere I would want to look nice. I think I would feel amazing in this look. So let's see it on, and then I'll be back to show you how I've already worn this in my real life. This is my Tuva Smart Cardigan from Sinclair Patterns. I have used a tall file and a size 16. I used a semi-structured sweater knit that is appropriate for this design, and I used a length that hits a high hip. There's also a full hip length option in the pattern. I have long sleeves that are hemmed normally, but there are also cuffs that you can add on with the same type of trim that you see on the front. I did choose to use a single button in my case. It is optional, you can do it or not if you want to. Closer up you can see how pretty this trim looks. I used cotton lycra that matches my print in navy. All along this curve are the pocket openings that are built in. Super clever technique. They are very easy to put together. You just have to concentrate and follow along all the steps, and you'll be amazed how you get a really inside finish that is super clean. The understitching here keeps all this wrong side of the fabric inside from being seen when you wear your garment. The hem is really neat on the inside too, and the back fits amazingly. There are princess seams there and gives gorgeous type of shaping on the back. Here's a closer look at the collar. The collar goes all around the back. It's so pretty. There's trim there as well, and the shoulder fit, hits my shoulder, great comfortable long sleeves. The neckline finish is super neat, and I love this front look that gives you a V type of neckline opening. I really think it suits my body shape, and I wish I'd had time to make more of these. This design is super unique and it's really fun to put together. The sewing techniques are really different to what we usually sew, and you know, it just helps us grow in our sewing and do different things. It's a really nice pattern and I recommend. Now you saw me dressed up in a dress with nice little booties and things, but it is actually one of the few garments that made it into my suitcase for my trip to Chile this summer. I've brought little to no clothes. I've brought so few things, very basic things. And when I was making this, I already had it in my mind that I wanted to travel with this. Now, even though it's summer, if you know, you've been on planes, in airports and planes, it's freezing. I always freeze in planes. It's so cold in there. I know that when I travel, I need to have layering pieces and things that are going to keep me warm. Here you see me wearing this in my real life. It was a great choice. My Tuva cardigan with my Vienna jeggings. Another pattern I made from Sinclair Patterns a couple of weeks ago. Super comfortable. I felt really good in my plane trip. It was just the right amount of comfort in the jeggings and the warmth I needed from this cardigan, and also look put together. I don't really like traveling dressed up in rags. I do like to feel put together but also comfortable when I travel. Traveling is really rough for me. I don't enjoy it, and this was just the perfect choice for this trip. You can see how these really work for me to dress up and look super pretty with a dress and also look put together on a trip like this. If you are here 100% for the sewing, then the sort of video ends for you. But I wanted to share like 1 or 2 minutes about my trip here. I know a lot of you have been interested and would like to see some things. I'd like to put some personal things in here every now and then, very sparsely. I always say this channel is 100% about sewing, but in the end I am a real person with a real life that does things other than sewing, and I'd love to share a little bit of my trip with you. I promise you it's like 1 or 2 minutes. I am not going to bore you. When I made it to the plane, I'm always really excited. Although I don't like flying that much, I'm always looking forward to when we cross the Andes. That is a lot of mountains between Argentina and Chile, and here you can see a few clips that I got from the plane. Even though it's summer, there's always snow there. When I've crossed in the winter, it's just the most majestic sight when there's a lot of snow. It's always very nice to see, and I love seeing the mountains. Here I'm almost at Santiago landing, a bit of green there. It's always such a rush when I feel the wheels of the plane touch my home country, because being a foreigner all the time, yeah, you get to miss the place where you're actually from, to hear your own language, to see how people speak in the same accent that you speak in. We had to travel about 450 kilometers. I don't know what's that in miles. I'll put it on the screen. And there are lots of nice places where you can stop and eat and go to the bathroom. I love those green walls that they have in these places. And I switched my clothes to another outfit, also from Sinclair Patterns, just because it's really hot there. I got my azalea top that has a really interesting front. I love that one, and I paired it with my Clio culottes. All knit fabrics, all really comfy for traveling and really fresh as well. As soon as I got out of the plane, I was dying. It was so hot, and I switched my outfits. So decked out in Sinclair Patterns for this trip. And then it's a really long road trip, but really enjoyable with my dad. And you can see some air shots of the area where my parents live. It's in the south of Chile. It's all very green, very nice. My parents live in a rural area, so that's why you see a lot of green. My parents have a pretty big land here, lots of trees. We are not in the middle of like a busy city or anything like that. I know I always say that this channel is all about sewing. I share very little about my personal life or everyday sort of happenings, vlog style, because it's just not a direction I've decided to take with the content of the channel. But every now and then I do like to put something personal in here for those of you who are interested. If you are not interested, that is perfectly fine. I'm really happy to have shared a little bit of the footage of my trip. It was really interesting. I got to wear all my mermaids. I've had to tick a lot of boxes to get here safely. I've had to do a couple of COVID tests. Not nice to do, I'm telling you. It's very uncomfortable, but it's all worth it to be able to come here and spend time with my parents. For those of you worried about being safe here, I'm in a really rural area. We don't go out just as we always did. We take really good care of ourselves and use a lot of precautions. Everyone's really cautious here in Chile. It's been pretty well managed compared to Brazil. I can see the difference here. So we're just praying that everything is fine and that we all stay healthy until we have to go back home. Remember to check out the Tuva cardigan over at Sinclair Patterns. It is still on sale. I'll leave you my affiliate link that takes you directly there if you want to use it. And if you are sewing today, I hope you have a lot of fun doing that. I'm going to go ahead and sew something else that you'll see in a little bit. I'm excited about that, a woven project with some shirrings. Just keep your eyes open for the videos coming over here from Chile, from my parents, but the channel keeps going as strong as always, I hope. Thank you for supporting all the work that I do here, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.